there. Now that we got everything pretty much finalized in here, now we're going to rotate back to the engine bay for a brief moment so we can actually get some goodies from Radium knocked out and put on. So we're going to go ahead and replace this M-tuned fuel rail. Nothing wrong with it. Everything's fine with it. I pretty much just wanted to be able to hide my sensors a little bit better, and then have the option of getting rid of this in the future and just throwing on one right on the rail. That would just work a little bit better. So got a Radium rail. They make them for 1.6 Miatas now, so I've got it and throw it on. That's the game plan. So let's get into it. All right, this is the rail itself. So in order to show you everything I got, everything's orb fitting. The rail itself is -8 orb on all the spots for it. I'll take this out in a second. But they have a billion different fittings for it. So I'm going to basically have this one, which is -8 orb to a -6 right on the end here. So that will be right where this whole situation will be. That way I can just go straight down, straight back, and I can't even worry about it. Don't have to see it, don't have to look at it, we'll be good. Have this one just in case I need to block off a port, which I think I'm going to block off this front one here until one day we swap that out. Maybe. No rush on that. There's nothing wrong with that one either. And then we have our sensor plug, essentially, which we're going to put on the bottom. That's the nice thing about this, that has a bottom. Let me take this out real quick. So this is the rail itself. Just pulled it straight out. So like I said, -8 orbs on each end, all over. And then obviously the big Radium logo on there. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Our injector holes and the bottom plug, which we should be able to use that because that's also -8. We will use that for NTP plug so we can hook up our fuel sensor. The previous one I had on there, I'll show you real quick. That's right back here, and you can still see my sensor just hanging upside down. That is essentially leaking from the little fitting that's in between. And just because it's fuel, I don't really want to add another point of failure in case one of those backs out or becomes loose. I'm just going to get rid of it altogether, and then we'll use the Radium one. Make it a lot easier, a lot cleaner. Shouldn't see it, can hide it out of the way, be even better. So, and then we have our last piece, which will just make it back to what this used to be, which is just a -8 orb to a -6. So that will run back to the fuel pressure regulator, go back down as the return, go all the way back to the tank, be good to go. So yeah, here's the Radium rail. Let's get into it, shall we? So I'm just gonna take everything out of their little boxes and then throw them on here real quick, and then we'll start disassembling all the other stuff to get the old stuff out. And if anybody's looking for an M-tuned rail for a 1.6, because you just want an M-tuned one instead of Radium, let me know. Sell it to you for cheap. And I must say, Radium, congrats on this beautiful piece of machinery. I'm getting these fittings just buttery smooth as they're already tight. You're just able to move them around with ease. So thank you for doing that so much easier. All right, change of plans. The thought process before was to have the sensor here. There's no way that'll fit. It'll just keep hitting the head. So we're gonna put the sensor on the end, move this fitting, oh my goodness, move the end fitting to where the block off is, move the block off underneath, and leave this one where it is. So that way, everything will essentially be ready to go, and then we won't have to buy any more fittings, which is the key. So it'll just come straight across from here, back over to the fuel pressure regulator, underneath, and then come back down. So let's get to it. Okay, cool. So we have the end, it's still the same. We have the block off now on the bottom. We have the straight across all the way down, and then we have our sensor, our fuel pressure sensor on the back. So all this will fit right in there with no issues, and then yeah. So the only thing I need to do now is just make an additional, change that from a 90 to a straight. Maybe even need to extend it. Probably shorten it, keep it the same, who knows. And then I think that's it. Make another straight over here for this, and we should be set. Okay, current game plan. There's not really a lot of room down here, even for a straight, so we're gonna do a 90. So it'll be the 90 that used to be on the end over here. We're gonna take that and utilize that on the another line, and then we're gonna use this 45 from the fuel pressure regulator right here, since it's gonna leave here and then go back in. So let's make some new lines, shall we? All right, so we got the old M-tuned rail out. We got the new Radium in. Looking good, looking good. all these wires, don't worry about it. I'm gonna tuck them away when I get the other injectors in. I have some ID 1050X injectors coming in, so, excuse me, I was trying to burp and got the hiccups. Yeah, got those coming in. So when I get to the place, I will swap them over and then should be set. But I'm glad that I could still use the original stuff. I really wanted to use the original stuff here and then set it up just to where it's gonna work reliably with no issues. So sweet. It's so much easier to get this in. Oh my gosh, because there's nothing in the way. So just being able to tighten that down with ease, worth it. Tuck is worth it. So all that's out of the way. Now we just need to button up a few other small items. The fuel stuff is done, which is fantastic. Just trying to think of what else is left. Minor things now, so let's get into it. All right, just spent a couple minutes cleaning everything up from the interior. So now we got the carpet vacuumed, looking good. Seats vacuumed. Back shelf is pretty much cleared out. Stuff that just needs to go in the glove box. Passenger side cleared out. So now we actually have an interior. It looks good, looks good. I'm not gonna put the top piece back on yet, just until I get what I'm looking for. But yeah, I'll probably show up to the tune just like this without anything displaying anything at this point. But yeah, super exciting. Super, super exciting. Actually, I'll probably put the old dash back in just so I can see temps of the coolant, because I don't have my coolant gauge hooked up anymore. So that way we'll be able to see that. But actually, we have our can gauge, so we'll still be fine. I'm just talking out loud, rambling. But now we're gonna cut this lid up real quick, slap this back on, and then we should be good to go there. And then we can start working on the electronic boost controller, getting that hooked up. And then what else? What else? I think that's pretty much it. I need to go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's to get a new hose. I just suspect it's old, probably needs to be replaced, could be ripped. Yeah, so we'll replace that. Everything else on that side is good to go. Yeah, then we'll start it up, just make sure it runs. So we have all of our connections run through that we need to through the glove box itself, through the hole in the back corner, and then the bigger hole that's up top for the ECU connections. We have the holes cut out for this, just to be able to put them in there. Probably won't be able to take them out unless I take the whole ECU out, so fingers crossed that this works pretty well. And then the can gauge for that portion of it, and we should be set. So we're gonna slap this thing back in there and go from there. All right, now that we have everything set up in here, wired and connected, I'm thinking about getting some Velcro just to push this down and keep it down so I can open and close this with ease. But yeah, we have everything connected here, basically running a long wire to the engine bay so we can hook up our electronic boost controller, which is something I've been waiting to do for quite some time. So let's get into it, shall we? Now I'm using this one here, which is the bottom. Basically, it's the first plug that you can use the expansion valve or the expansion loom on. The second one I haven't really used too much of, but the first one I have going. So with that, I'm using the brown wire, which is right here. That's going to be the ignition 8 connection. So let's go to the configuration. Now, when we're looking at ECU itself, we want to hook up our electronic boost controller. We're going to go to ECU settings. I already have it set up there, but ECU settings. As you know, the touchscreen is always. Get that to pop up. We'll type in boost. There we go, and then we're gonna have a few different options. We'll hit boost setup. That's gonna give us this window right here. Pretty much what we're gonna do, just to start, there's many different ways to do it, but I'm gonna set mine up for open loop. The power output, we're gonna set to ignition 8. A lot of other options in there, but I just chose ignition 8. Feel free to choose whatever you'd like, hit okay. Again, if you use ignition 8, it's the brown wire on the loom. For the rest of this, PWM frequency, 30 hertz. What else we got? Active state, low, high. Not really sure which it's supposed to be on, but it works on either. And then scrolling down a little bit, we have the map activation, which is basically anytime that the map, which you can see here, is basically just reading in between 14-ish for the PSI, which is pretty standard. I just set this to essentially be below that. So this is always gonna be on when the car's on. Or when the keys in the ignition is on at that point. I could raise it up so that way it's not on at all, but not that big a deal. We're testing right now. So adjust that as you see fit. We're not gonna worry about the rest of this stuff for now. We're just gonna leave that as is. But when it comes time to test and you wanna make sure it works, we will go up to the ignition test, change that from, you can do on, and if you do on, you'll hear click. So we have it set to on right now, and then, so technically it's active, but it's a pulsating device. So we'll turn that off. We'll hear it click again. There we go. And then last but not least, we will do the PMW and hit OK, which is basically just going to pulse it at whatever frequency we set this at. So that's 30 Hertz. So I think it adjusts itself automatically, but we'll hit OK. And as you can see, we're working. So we're at 10 Hertz right now. Can adjust that as need be, but we know it works, which is the important thing. So with that in mind, your boost controller is set up at a minimum, and then your tuner can hopefully finish the rest of it. And for the intake of the turbo, I actually bought a 3-inch 90, essentially. So thought process, put it on here, line it up, probably push it back a little bit further, and then just angle it a little bit inwards, and then we should be set. So gonna mark this up, cut it on the bandsaw, and then just slap this on real quick too. And here we are, running like a top. Plug the fans in real quick. So we're good to go. We got it running. Everything's doing well. The fans are kicking on like they're supposed to. It revs immediately, even without TPS on there. So when TPS gets on there, it'll be even better, which I can't wait for. So let it warm up a couple times, cycle it over a couple times, and then we should be set. Put it back on the ground. All right, so we got some push lock fittings for Motion Raceworks. I'm going to be getting a few other things from them in the future, but the reason I got these push lock fittings is because they are metal, if you couldn't tell. And then this should be able to withstand a lot more heat than the regular air line is. So this is what I have in there currently. This is really just to mock everything up, figure out what I need to do, get it going. This is good for airline necessarily, but that's pretty much it. I wouldn't put it next to the turbo because this is like your generic Amazon brand. It will essentially just melt. I think this is up to 200 and something degrees, which, I mean, it's definitely gonna be hot over here by a turbo. So need to get that taken care of, swap those out. And then I think the intake side I'm gonna leave alone with the cheap stuff just to see how it does. I don't imagine it's gonna be as hot over there as it will be over here, but we shall see. So I'll bring some extra line when I go to get tuned, and we should be good. But this is the cheaper stuff. Works pretty well. I mean, it does the same thing. It's meant for specifically just air and nothing really else. So not really heat related, but yeah, get the plastic pieces off and then we'll get the metal pieces on. And it'll kind of match with the bay and the gray that we have going on in here. So it'll be kind of cool. And here are the major differences between the push lock fittings on Amazon, the black one, and then the Motion Raceworks in steel. It's just sick, yeah. So the opening for this, pretty straightforward. Grabs what it needs to grab. Teflon tape on it on its own. Swivel head after it's attached, great. But it won't deal with heat very well. It's gonna just melt because it's plastic. Whereas metal obviously will withstand all of that. Has a nylon little washer on there, and then you can just see how much flow is in there. So yeah, no, I like the metal ones a lot better. Like I said, it'll match with everything else going in there. So let's get to it, shall we? All right, now that we know the car runs successfully with no issues right now, we're gonna go ahead and get the injectors in, and then we can mess with that before our drive. If we're able to drive and everything works well, then we should be set. My game plan originally was to use my old Megasquirt, which is tuned with the current injectors that are in there, the 460 RX-7 injectors, instead of using these and then flip these over when I get there. But because these require splicing in, that's gonna be the challenge. So unless I can find an adapter, that might work too. I may just do that. I'll look online, see if I can find an adapter. That way I don't have to run these yet, and then I can run these when I get there to make it easier to swap everything over. Because swapping it over is literally just taking off this AN line, disconnecting probably just from the rail itself, probably be easier. And then our 2 connection points right here, and we should be set to just pull it out. Lift it up, rotate it backwards, and then flip these in, push it back down, should be set. So I'll look for some adapters for that, make that a little bit easier. But yeah, that's the game plan. Now that I just made the plan live. So we're not putting the injectors in. We'll find adapters just to use it for the weekend, and then once we're done, we'll do that. We'll put those in. So now we're good there. Now we can just mess with the sensors to make sure they're actually working right. And really that's gonna be it for this night. Like I said, I still need to bash this in to make a little bit more room. As you can see, there's been contact in the past. So do that on both sides, grind that down, make it nice and smooth, push it back a little bit with the hammer, and then, yeah, put the wheels on, put the fenders on, put everything on, and then put it back on the ground, and then drive it for a bit, so. All right, so just put the fender on. What a pain, what a pain. Mainly on this side, just because of how I routed everything. We'll get to the other side once I try it out, but going in here, let me get flat. You can see where the wiring right up here in that area, that's pretty much where it's just bulging out the fender. So because of that, it made it a little bit more difficult than needed to be to put it all back together. But yeah, we shouldn't have any concerns of it being in the way of hitting anything or any lower. If it does start rubbing for whatever reason, we'll just zip tie it up a little bit higher, because it would only be this spot. So, but yeah, everything's back in there. Everything's lined up, looking good, looking good. Fender gaps looking good. It's really tight in place. So yeah, we're back in business on this side. Finally, full fender on, flares on, good to go. So now we got to get to this side. This side should be easier because this is tucked in here instead of bulging out. So let's get going, let's test it out. And just like that, we have the driver or passenger side done. So now everything's bolted up. This was way easier on this side just because, like I said, it's really tucked up in there. So there's literally nothing really pushing up against that, which is great. Makes it a lot easier to put this on. Super straightforward. So now that we have this, everything's done. Let's fill it with coolant, put it on the ground, and then tomorrow we will drive it. So cut to tomorrow. We're outside, boys. Sweet. First drive success. Everything went according to plan. No issues, no leaks. Everything seems to be doing well. So now we just got to do the last piece, which is our wastegate springs. All right, the last thing I need to do before the tune itself is just to upgrade our spring pressure. Right now we're using 12-pound springs. So we're going to try and go up to 15 just as a bare minimum, and then use the electronic boost controller to go up to whatever the motor is happy with. So pretty much I want to get a race port, but for now pretty much just need to take off all these Allen bolts and then have a clamp to put it back in there. But otherwise, yeah, should be ready to go. I'm gonna try and use my welding clamps to hold it down instead of using the traditional clamp to hold it in place, and then using another C-clamp or a hand clamp just to tighten it down. So let's see if this works. All right, well, it overall worked. Got all the holes out. Got it just clamped on the edge, put some tape there to protect it. So now it's fully loose, and then I should be able to loosen this up to allow me to lift this up. And then when I take the old springs out, put the new ones in, tighten it back down the same way, and then slap it back on. So let's get it knocked out. And just like that, we're put back together. And just like that, we're put back together. Everything's assembled. We have the old stuff taken out, putting away. So 15 pounds, here we come. And then however much more we can handle. And just like that, we're ready for our tune. So everything's set up the way it needs to be. At this point, we're just waiting for the day. So I think the last thing I'm probably gonna do is throw in an oil pressure sensor. I'm gonna use the same sensor I used for the fuel pressure. So that way I can actually see what my oil pressure is, because my stock one's been having some issues with the stock gauge. So we'll just have that set up to the ECU. Should be good. But yeah, that's it, man. If you liked what you saw, like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more, man. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Enjoy your day.